Good morning, just got up, but my mind's been going over and over about this light bulb moment, what it was for me. Evans wasn't worried that there was somebody still on the ward. Once he starts finding all the murders and the attempted murders, he wasn't worried that there was somebody on the ward still. No sense of a remembered urgency, nothing in these interviews to say, when I was worried, I wonder if they were still there. Could have been a doctor, could have been a nurse. But no doctors are checked, no rotas for doctors are checked. They're not drawn up. They know they're looking for a nurse, and they know they're looking for one nurse, one particular one, the one that they've already been suspecting for 2 years. Evans isn't worried that there are no more murders can happen, because he's been told, and he knows that the person that's been under suspicion for 2 years isn't there anymore. And if he knows that, he knows her name. But I think he knows her name, and he knows that she's off the ward way before he gets involved with the police even. And he knows that through. I believe he knows that through. I'll keep saying that. I believe he knows that. Or I believe he knows that. Back in 2016, Lucy's been off the ward since July 2016. There's nothing to worry about in terms of further murders. The point of all this construction is to get Lucy for the murders and, I'm putting in inverted commas, the murders and attempted murders from 2015 to 2016 to deal with that spike. To stop the negligence claims coming through. To stop all that. Here's another massive omission. This is all about what Evans the fraud doesn't say. At no point in these interviews or in any way, or, he's not reflecting back that he said anything about this at the time either, that he's aware of the difference in the status of the ward, that it's gone down from a level 2 to level 1. At the end of his frame of reference, at the end of his period that he's looking at, July 2016, it's gone down so that a whole different range of babies are being cared for there. And he knows that. And he knows about the RCPCH report. But he makes no mention about that. About discounting that. About considering that as to why the spike has stopped. Because there's a different range of baby. They're not so premature. They haven't got so many needs. It's a level 1. So he doesn't care about that. Also, let's look at the frame again. He's looking at cases from January. It's all so constructed. From January 2015 to July 2016. Why has he gone back to January 2015? If the spike starts in the middle of 2015 in June, why has he gone back to the beginning? Well, it's because he's got to include all those other deaths and crashes that he can discount to give the impression as though he's looking at everything, while absolutely knowing he's going to reduce it to the 15 that have got Lucy's name on it. Because he knows she's off the ward. He knows it. He knows what he's looking for. His discovery is what he's been told to find, and what they all know. All the 3 elements, the police, the doctors and him, it's all being run from the doctors. The other point, the other end of the frame that he's looking at, which is July 2016. Okay, so he doesn't mention anything about the reduction from a level 2 to a level 1 unit. And considers, maybe there's been a spike for some reason, and maybe that's been instrumental in stopping this spike in deaths. That's why it's been stopped there. But are we to believe, there were two deaths in 2017, I think, but I'm assuming they must have come, because it's very hard to get the detailed stats on this. They must have come after he started doing his reports. But then again, why didn't he look into those? Why didn't he look into those? Why didn't he look into the actual deaths? There were a few that happened in 2017. They say they'd stopped, but there were some that happened in 2017. But there were crashes, weren't there? There must have been crashes. I'm assuming there's got to have been some. I'm talking about between the period July 2016 and the period that he's starting his reports in July 2017. Why is he not asking for crashes for that period of time? Why does it cut off in July 2016? Why did he ask for it to be cut off then? Or whoever brings it to him? Well, it's a joint agreement between all of the parties, the police, the gang of four bastards, and bastard Fraud Evans, and the bastard police. It's an agreement between all of them to use that specific period, not beyond it, not before it. And there's another thing, he's not interested in the stillbirths, the high rate of stillbirths in the hospital, and wondering what that might be. Evans. He's not tasked with that, but he's not even interested in it in terms of looking at the hospital and babies as a whole, holistically, what's happening to babies there. Not interested in the high rate of stillbirths, because it doesn't fit the agenda. Doesn't fit the agenda, which is to nail Lucy Letby, whose name he knows, and he knows that she's no more threat, quote unquote, threat to babies, because she's been off the ward since 2016. And since the police have come in, she's not coming back on. So police have told you don't have to worry about this, Dr. Evans. There obviously have been there's some problems here, but don't worry that there's kind of a live problem here, because it's contained. That's it. The police know it's contained. Whatever they think it is, it's contained for them, and it's contained for Evans. That's why in the interviews he doesn't go, well, oh God, when I started to realise that it was murder after murder after murder, I thought, oh my God, they might still be there. I know they've obviously taken a break now because they're worried about getting caught, but they're still there. Or have they moved to another hospital? We've got to find out who it is. No reflection on that. It's all very lackadaisical, all very slow when he goes, oh, and then I told them, like they couldn't work it out themselves, I told them to look at all the rotors, and then they might find who it is with the doctors and the rotors. They didn't do the doctors. Of course they didn't do the doctors, no, because they're looking for a nurse. And he goes, oh, and then eventually it emerged. We've got all the time in the world to work out who's murdering people here. No, there's no hurry. It just emerges. Don't have to worry about getting them off the ward, because they know they're off the ward. They know they're not a threat, because they weren't a threat. It's a construction at every damn level between the three of them to make it look as though it's an investigation. There was no investigation. It's a hit. There was no investigation by the doctors. There was a witch finding. And then the bozo, dumb as fuck, thick as mince police come in and say, oh God, we got a big case here, get a massive budget for this, and glory. They want the glory. And then Evans comes in, wants the glory and the power and the glory. And then all the multiple motives of and then the NHS will chime in then, because they realise, oh God, well, we are going to be hit with a massive negligence claims now. Oh yeah, well, let's do it. As it's out now, as it's been reported, it can't be the negligence story. We'll go with the serial killer story then. We tried to protect Lucy. We didn't believe. I'm talking about the management now. We didn't believe she was doing anything wrong. We protected her for 2 years, but now it's out. We'll join in, like Dr. A did. Now it's out. We'll betray her, like Dr. A did, who up to want Lucy's no, up to July they're exchanging texts. Well, he's supportive of her still. Dr. A. As soon as the police get involved, he don't want to know her anymore. Which is why Lucy says, you didn't stand by me. He didn't stand by her. And then the management doesn't stand by her in the end. Although you can tell in the Karen Rees interview, the head of nursing, you can tell when she's saying, well, because she was seeing Lucy socially, and meeting up with her, even once she'd been told to leave the ward, once Lucy had been told to leave the ward. And she goes, well, how could how could somebody have acted that well, being upset week after week after week after week? How could she have managed it? The way she's asking that is saying, well, she doesn't believe she's acting. She doesn't believe she was acting. I'm absolutely sure that Karen Rees believes that Lucy Letby's innocent, as do some of her colleagues. Maybe some of them don't, because this is talk, there was kind of a bitchiness on the ward, that's the word that they used, the bitchiness on the ward, that why Lucy's getting the opportunity to look after the most sickest babies, the ones that need the most intensive care. So there's all that going on as well. So there'll be some that, but there's obviously definitely some colleagues that believe in Lucy, and I believe Karen Rees is one of them. Yeah, so at risk of boring everyone, I hope I'm probably boring. It's just, well, it's not boring. It's not boring, of course it's not. But I've got to keep repeating these things to get it out there and get it into my own head. That no urgency from Dowie once he discovers the murders happening en masse. No remembered urgency when he's talking about it in current interviews. Oh my God. There's a murder out there somewhere. We've got to get them off the ward. We've got to make sure they're not there. They could do it again at any moment. There's none of that urgency there, because he knows that there's no one there, that the person suspected is off, and he knows their name. And then the artificiality of him, it's his idea to check the rotors for the doctors and nurses, but the doctors are never checked on the rotors. Never do the rotors for the doctors. Why? Why is that? Why don't they do them? Can you see it all? Can you see it all being constructed? I don't know if I can bear to do the Hummingbird video analysis, because you get that absolute meathead, thick as mince, bloody Hughes, telling you how they're constructing it, showing you how they're constructing it in retrospect, because it's all about, the defence will attack you otherwise. Not because he's leading an open investigation as to whether are there any crimes at all. I've got to get into that. It's unbearable to watch him. You can see the fakeness of it all. The three components have got together. Sorry, I've lost my track there with the essentials for this, is that no mention at all from Evans that it's a level 2 going down to a level 1 in 2016, and that's one end of his book in July 2016. That's the far end of his book end of the period that he's looking at. No mention of that. Wondering why, or maybe that's relevant to why the spike has stopped. No, it's got to be once it's the murderer, it's the murderer. Nothing else can come in. Back to Hughes saying, I hope the expert might have found it was a bad bug in the water. He wasn't looking at bad bugs in the water, had no information about them, had no curiosity about them, nor did the police. There were no investigations done about that. To consider that. It's all pretense. It's all pretense, because they had the person in the frame and they framed them. They framed them through this artificial, constructed idea that they're doing an open set of investigations, knowing what they're going to find, knowing that they're going to construct that list with all the X's down it. I'm just going to move on to something else now. I just read the Science on Trial article to do with the insulin, and a damning, which is I've kind of known this already. It's not that it's news to me. It's not a new thing, but it's a well-written article, and I really recommend it. Look at the latest article on Science on Trial. I'll link it in the low bar, whatever they call it. I'll link it there. But read that. I'm not going to go into all the details of it, but in outline, it's about Myers, Casey, who loads of people have been saying he's one of the best. Oh, he's one of the best. Yeah. He's one of the best out there. He's one of the best defence cases you can get. Well, as his defence, he made this disastrous mistake to agree with the prosecution, not to contend it with experts, to agree that somebody had poisoned the TPN, the feed bags, the babies, with insulin, not to challenge it, because it's challengeable in many, many different ways, because the tests done that are showing these insulin levels are just completely not the right tests. They're not reliable in any way whatsoever, and he would have or should have known that. Why has he agreed to that? Why has he agreed and made Lucy such a hostage of fortune, and his whole defence a hostage of fortune? To say, because the gambit is, yeah, somebody poisoned them, but it wasn't Lucy. And then she's up for all these other ones as well. Are the jury going to believe there's another serial killer there? Because they've already got the person with all the crosses down. They're on shift all the time. They're not looking at anyone else. They're never going to look at anyone else. Because there is no murderer there. But he's insured by agreeing that, Myers, Casey, defence. He's insured that Lucy is completely finished then, by not challenging that, by accepting it, by agreeing it. I think it's called, the technical term it comes up in the article, an agreement of fact between the defence and the prosecution, i.e. they've agreed between them, they've agreed that there has been a deliberate poisoning of insulin, that those bags have been tampered with. Instead of fighting it. So what are we left with? One of the best defence cases. Well, there's one of two options here. One's worse than the others. They're both terrible, but one is much, much, much worse. The first one is he's absolutely fucking useless, and he's been a disaster for Lucy, and that's quite possible. Even though having the best reputation, he's crap, because because of that agreement of fact. He's made it almost definite that that the jury's going to find guilt. Because they've got to decide, oh, well, no, it's not Lucy the serial killer. It's still out there, the serial killer, even though once she's not on the ward, there's no more killings anymore. So we can't really find her innocent, because she's got to be her, isn't it? Can't be another one. No one's ever been spoken about as a suspect. But now the jury's we've been asked to think there's another one out there. That agreement of fact between the defence and the prosecution about the bloody TPN bags that they were interfered with, deliberately poisoned with them, deliberately mixed in with insulin. Jesus Christ. So he's terrible. Either Myers is terrible, so bad, and the solicitor and the whole team so disgustingly bad that you couldn't believe it. You might as well get somebody off the street to defend you. Might well get the first person you meet off the street would do a better job than that. Because they'd say, well, is it true what they're saying? Do we have to say that we agree that there was a deliberate poisoning here? Or I'll come to a close soon. I didn't think it would be this long, but the other option's much worse. Can you guess what it is yet? Can you see what it is yet? Can you see what it is yet? Is that they were told, they were lent on, they were convinced, I'm talking about the defence team now, and perhaps even the judge, that they were told and they lent on to throw the fight, to throw it, to give the appearance of doing, have a go at Dewey Evans, have a go at him a bit, But they were told to throw the fight like a boxer's told, and they paid off later. You're not going to win this one, Mr. Myers, you know what I mean. You're not going to win it. Your client, try and give the appearance, again back to appearances, shadows and appearances, the appearance of doing a good job. Do that, but you're going to throw the fight in round 5. What is round 5? Round 5 is your agreement of fact. Your agreement of fact that there is a poisoner out there, it's just not Lucy. And that'll do for her. That'll throw the fight. You know how to do it. You know how to make it look like. Now, I'm not saying that is what happened. But it's either him being absolutely useless, dangerously useless to Lucy, and the whole team, the whole defence team, dangerously useless to her, or he's corrupt, or he's been lent on. And when you look at some of the judges' interferences and attitudes, which we'll maybe get onto in another video, is he part of that as well? Have the powers that be, the establishment, after spending all this money on this issue, and it becoming politicised actually, because if it's not Lucy as a murderer, then it's something to do with the hospital as a whole, and perhaps many hospitals, and many deaths in many neonatal wards. Either way, there's a massive thing to cover up and a massive amount of money to protect. So we'll spend 10 million on it to save 200 million. So either they're completely useless, the defence, which is possible, or the system has been corrupted to the extent that they're told to throw the fight. Somebody's lent on them to say, well, you're not going to win this one. Find a way to throw it. Myers has got, well, how can I do? Well, I know what I'll do. I'll just agree I won't fight the insulin, even though I know that the prosecutors are calling that the smoking gun, and the without the insulin cases, the air embolus ones wouldn't stand up on their own. Even though I know that's their smoking gun, that's the one I'm going to have an agreement of fact about. That's the one I'm going to agree happened. I'm not going to fight that. I'm not going to fight You've got to read the science on trial, and also, obviously, all of Dr. Scott McLachlan's work on insulin. It's just that they've encapsulated it here in the Science and Trial article in relation to Myers' defence, which I'm sure that Dr. Scott McLachlan does as well. But really, so he's either been got to, or he's crap. But everyone's saying he's great. So what do you think? What do you think about Myers and potentially the judge? It's all possible. This is just I don't want to go too far off onto this, but if you're looking into Julian Assange and him trying to get an appeal, because he's being slowly murdered there, that's the phrase other people have used, it's a slow murder of him in Belmarsh. If you look at what the judge's interference is there and their deliberate blocking of an appeal for no good reason at all, that they've been lent on, that the judge is corrupt in terms of the appeal of Julian Assange to appeal against extradition, and how he's being held in solitary confinement and being driven mad and being slowly killed. That the appeal judge in that can get a 150-page submission and then just do a very quick three-page reply, just saying there's no legal argument being made. There's a really good interview with Chris Hedges and a journalist, I can't remember. I'll try and find that, but I don't want to muddy the waters. But it's just an example of what I think of the judiciary corruption out there that's evident. It's always been there. Always been there. Was it there in the Lucy Letby case? Was corruption running right through the trial? Was there a decision made to throw the fight? Or is it just down to them, Myers being absolutely useless and the solicitor being useless? Or deliberately useless, if you see what I mean. So, anyway, I'll leave it there. Cheers. Take care. Bye.